The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
Hey there, Ryan Reynolds here. It's a new year, and you know what that means. No, not the diet. Resolutions. A way for us all to try and do a little bit better than we did last year. And my resolution, unlike Big Wireless, is to not be a raging and raise the price of wireless on you every chance I get. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.
Amateur Traveler, episode 912. Today, the Amateur Traveler talks about scenic railroads, seashores, and civil rights, the Appalachian Trail, pot liquor, and a meet and three as we go to the great state of Georgia. This is Chris Christensen from Amateur Traveler. Let's talk about Georgia. I'd like to welcome to the show Lesli Peterson from 365atlantatraveler.com, who's come to talk to us about Georgia. Lesli, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
And I actually know Lesli not from the blog as much, but from the podcast that she does about travel blogging. But we'll talk about that more at the end. But Lesli, what's your connection with Georgia?
I moved there after I graduated from high school. I went to high school in Japan and then moved to Atlanta and lived there about 30 years. So I went to high school there, got married there. My kids were born there.
And you just recently moved away.
Yes, just recently. And then I stay in touch, though. I still have family there. My in-laws are there. My father's there.
Your blog is there.
The blog is there. And then I have a team there, right, to keep things current as possible.
Excellent. And why should someone go to Georgia?
I love Georgia because I am an outdoor person. Mm-hmm. And Georgia's got this great city. Everybody talks about Atlanta. Atlanta is fantastic. I'll tell you why I think it's most fantastic in a second. But it also has mountains. So beautiful hiking opportunities, waterfalls, great camping, beautiful rivers filled with fish and all that sort of thing. And then the beach. So there's the coast. Most people know Savannah, but there's so much more to the coast than just Savannah. In fact, Savannah doesn't even have a beach. But this idea of this big city and mountains and beach all in one place is very enticing. And then Atlanta, I'll tell you the best part about Atlanta.
Okay.
I'm guessing you've probably been more places than I have. I don't know, 40 of the states and probably only about 15 countries. But Atlanta is like one of the top 3 food cities I've ever been to. And I struggle with that now that we have moved away. And we took a RV trip for 14 months around the U.S. before we came here to Colorado. Mm-hmm. And I just kept looking for a place that had something that could stand next to Atlanta, some sort of restaurant, and it's just not there.
Excellent. What kind of itinerary are you going to lay out for us if we're spending a week in Georgia? What should we do?
I think that, again, these are probably things that are going to be more exciting for people like myself who enjoy the outdoors. But I thought I'd start with telling you the must-sees, the things that you must take advantage of while you're there. The first one I would say is the state parks. They're
Hmm.
beautiful. They're where a large portion of the waterfalls are going to be and really lovely. And what's great about the state parks is that it could take you from the ocean to the city to the mountains. You can do all of that, even if you wanted to stay at the state parks the entire time. One of my favorite things to do in Georgia is the Blue Ridge Scenic Railroad. So that's up in the
Okay.
mountains. And the fall time is actually the best, if you ask me, because you can see the leaves changing. And they've got an open air car, which is perfect for getting a full view of the leaves.
And tell me a little more about the Blue Ridge Scenic Railroad. So where is that? And
It's in
okay.
Blue Ridge, Georgia. And it's so neat. It's right in the downtown area. So if you decide to go shopping up there, and I'll share this with you a little bit later, but Blue Ridge is the best of all of the cities in the north. Blue Ridge is the best
Okay.
for food, for shopping, for things to do, for hiking. And the railroad sits right there in the middle, and you can just grab tickets right beside it. And they have short rides that are like just 3 hours. Let's see, I think that I want to say it's 3 hours and 5 hours. They also have rail cars that go on
Okay.
the track
When you say rail cars, you talking about the ones that are powered
by
by
your
people or
hand.
rail
Yes.
bikes or
Yeah, where you're like pumping up and down with your arms.
okay.
What's also neat about the Blue Ridge Railroad is that it takes you to McKaysville, Georgia,
Okay.
and you get out and you have time to grab a bite to eat or something. But in McKaysville, it's a border town, so you can stand with 1 foot in Georgia and 1 foot in Tennessee. Yeah, Tennessee
Yep.
at the same time.
I had you if you hadn't remembered it, but that's okay.
And Copper Hill is the city in Tennessee that's the sister to McKaysville. So there's
Okay.
lots of shopping there. There's 6 breweries that are all fun.
And getting back here into a little bit of more itinerary, we're not starting with the Blue Ridge Scenic Railway. We're probably flying or driving into Atlanta. And so, is there anything we're going to do in Atlanta before we head up to the Blue Ridge Scenic Railway?
Gotcha. I think the best thing to do in Atlanta, or the exciting thing
Atlanta
there,
area.
is the civil rights history. So I would encourage you to go to MLK National Park and walk around there. Of course, that's free. You can see his childhood home. You'll also
And that's going to include Ebenezer Baptist Church, where he
absolutely,
was.
it's
Okay.
all included in there. And when you usually think of a historic site, you think of like this building, the hotel in Memphis. But this is several buildings that you're walking around to see.
And when the hotel in Memphis, you're talking about the hotel where MLK was killed,
Shot.
which
Yeah.
is now the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, and also a wonderful site, but not in Georgia.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's so. This
But you'll
also
walk
includes
around.
then his grave.
Yes. And then also the fire station, which was the first integrated fire station, is there. There's several
Oh,
different
interesting. Okay.
components.
Okay.
And either right before you do that or right after you do that, depending on when you get in, you get to have lunch at Pascal's, which is Southern soul food. So get ready for everything to be cooked in oil. You're going to have the fried okra, you have to have the cornbread, all of those things. But Pascal's is known because it was a meeting place for MLK and his team when they would
Okay.
get together and make decisions
Right.
or meet together. That's where they did it. It's really good food. Warrants a visit outside of that, but when tied in with the history, it's unique.
Got it. Okay.
Special. So while we're in Atlanta, I think what I would skip would
Okay.
be the aquarium and the zoo. And I know it's the largest aquarium in the US or the world or something like that. And the only place to see whale sharks, I don't know.
Oh,
I
okay.
swam with the whale sharks there. It's not that it's not a nice aquarium or a nice zoo. They're amazing, but I don't know that you're going to get that much from them that you're not going to get at any other aquarium or zoo. And they're really expensive, quite honestly.
Okay.
If you want to do museums around Atlanta, I would recommend the Michael C. Carlos Museum, which is at Emory University. They have fantastic mummy exhibits there.
Okay.
And especially if you have kids, but even if you don't, the Fernbank Science Museum is incredible. I think it's probably the best museum in the city. And especially because it's connected to what we call Fernbank Forest. So there's a whole series outside of trails with art and learning opportunities for the kids and all that sort of thing. And it's just really beautiful. And if you're not traveling with the kids, they have regular 21 and older science nights in the evening. And I think that's probably the most I would do in Atlanta. I think the value of Georgia can be found outside of the city.
Okay. And just for the record, the aquarium is the largest in the U.S.
In the U.S.
Mhm.
Thank you.
There's a larger one in China.
Yeah. So let's go back north of the city.
Okay.
You'll have to take a car, but I think 2 hours will get you into the heart of the mountains from the city. Go to Blue Ridge. I highly recommend that if you're going to stay in the north area, you want to stay in a cabin in Blue Ridge, preferably on Lake Blue Ridge.
Okay.
There's not a lot of unique boutique hotels there, nothing fun. Maybe Lake Raven Hotel, but I'd still recommend heading to Blue Ridge. So you've got the railroad there. You've also got Springer Mountain Trail, which is the approach trail to the Appalachian Trail,
Okay.
which starts in Georgia. And if you're really looking for something unique, there's a place there called Lenfoot, Lenfote. And it's part of the state parks system, although it's outside of a state park. But they have a slogan: the hike is the only way in. So you have to hike 5 miles into the forest, and you come to Linfoot, and it is bunkhouse accommodations, nothing fancy. Shared community restrooms. It's broken up between the sexes, but everybody shares. And it's so peaceful, so beautiful. They have a gentle drum that comes out in the morning to wake the people who are interested in order to see the sunrise.
A gentle drum.
A gentle drum.
I'm not sure why a wife would agree that anything at sunrise is going to be gentle, but.
And the food they make there is really good, which surprised me. I've been maybe 3 times now, and it's always sensational. And they have programs for adults, programs for kids. They have worm composting that they do there. They grow their own food.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really cool is that a lot of times, instead of hiking all the way down through Springer Mountain, people coming off the Appalachian Trail will actually take a side trail and go to Linfoot, because they will house them and feed them if they've just come off the trail. They're ending their trip.
Okay.
And their families will usually meet them there.
And so this is for through hikers who've done north to south on the Appalachian Trail and have been on the trail for some time now.
It's so fun when they're there because they celebrate them. They come out with a cake. Everybody's cheering. It's really fun. And it's pretty constant flow of people.
Interesting.
So that's what I would say is great up north. Now, as far as museums go up there, you've got to stop at Expedition Bigfoot, because Georgia has its own Bigfoot history.
Okay.
Which is fun. And then you'll probably want to...
And tell me a little bit more. Expedition Bigfoot, is it a tourist trap? And I mean that in the nicest possible way, or is it a scientific museum, or?
It is put together by a man who's been studying claims and trying to weed
Okay.
out which ones are valid and which ones are not. And he's collected artifacts. So my favorite thing, I think, is the butt imprint, but there's also a foot imprint. And then he's collected audio recordings from other people. So you can put the
Okay.
headphones on and listen to audio recordings. It probably is a tourist trap, but the Bigfoot legend is alive and breathing in Georgia. And this is the only place that I'm aware of that you can see all of that come together.
Okay.
Konnichiwa, I'm Yuki, a tour leader with Explore. Who knew that hidden among Tokyo's towering skyscrapers was a peaceful tea house surrounded by ancient trees and serene ponds? Actually, I knew. It was my mother's secret sanctuary. Not everyone knows about Tokyo's Hamarikyu Gardens. Arigatou gozaimasu. But you will if you explore. Search exploreworldwide.com and don't just travel, explore.
We're so done with New Year, New You. This year, it's more you on Bumble. More of you shamelessly sending playlists, especially that one filled with show tunes. More of you finding Geminis because you know you always like them. More of you dating with intention because you know what you want. And you know what? We love that for you. Someone else will too. Be more you this year and find them on Bumble.
Also, up north, I want to mention that Dahlonega, Georgia is, at least they call themselves, I'm sure there's some debate with North Carolina, but the first place in the United States to have a gold rush. So it precedes the California gold rush.
Okay.
What's cool about this place is you can go to the square. Of course, they have gem mining places you can pan for gold. That's very touristy. But what's cool about the little historical center on the square is if you look closely at the brick, there's gold in the brick that they used to build the building. And then inside they have pictures and artifacts from people who were the original gold rushers, I guess you could say.
Okay.
And also up north, New Echota is one of the state parks that I recommend. I guess it's officially a historic site, but it was the quote unquote official beginning of the Trail of Tears. And
Okay.
what you can see there is the Cherokee Indian printing press
Yeah.
and other buildings. I cried my eyes out when I went, but it's a really important part of our history, even as ugly as it is.
And I'm not sure that everyone who listens, this is a fairly sophisticated audience. So I think most people probably know what the Trail of Tears are, but we're talking about especially the Cherokee who basically had assimilated and came up with their own newspaper and had adopted Western ways and were still kicked out of Georgia and the region and sent over a long, arduous trail where many died to Indian Territory, what is now Oklahoma, by Andrew
4,000 of them
Jackson,
in Georgia.
by Andrew Jackson, with whom they had been allies earlier on in some of the Indian wars to add an extra level of injustice to the whole thing.
Yeah, 4,000. And it's just, it saddens me.
Yep.
Okay. Now let's head back toward the city. We're going to go through the city though.
Oh.
So everything south of Atlanta is called South Georgia, even though Atlanta's pretty far up north. So you've got the South Georgia and the coast.
Okay.
As you're coming through in the suburbs, there's a great Western art museum, Booth Western Art Museum. I definitely recommend stopping there. And you'll have an opportunity to go through, as you're heading south, a little town called Milledgeville. It's a very small town that doesn't get a lot of fanfare, but it's such a cute, the old-fashioned square, great restaurants, shopping. You walk around, have a wine tasting here, pick up an ice cream there, that sort of thing. Another one further south that's great for that is Thomasville. And then on the coast, St. Mary's. Those are really great little towns.
Okay.
But the other thing we'll do is in South Georgia that I would encourage you to take a look at. There's two places. They're quirky artists. That's what I'll call them. So one,
Okay.
Howard Finster. You familiar with him?
Not off the top of my head.
So he was quite the religious zealot, but also loved to make art out of trash.
Okay.
And he's got his entire garden that you can walk through and see all his art. And then there's also an Airbnb there showcasing his art. And then what people call a psychedelic wonderland, which is this
Okay.
place called Passaquan. And it was built by Eddie Owens Martin, who later became the EOM. He became Saint Ohm. But it is a crazy place with beautiful art. But this, instead of like art being made from trash, it's bright colors, oranges and reds, and buildings with bright blue wall ceilings, floors. There's one area where there's huge, larger than life people, statues outside that you walk through to get from one area to the other. And they're painted accurately, but with some fun, I should say. So, yeah. So be careful if you're bringing your children. But
I thought that's where you were going with that. Okay.
but just crazy. And so I think that's something that gets overlooked because they are both a little bit out of the way, but they're worth stopping. And if you go to Passaquan, then you're going to be close to Richland Rum, which is a distillery that was started by Eric Vonk, who was the president of the United States' division of Ronstadt. Are you familiar with Ronstadt? They're like a temp agency, one of the largest temp agencies in the world.
Okay.
They're not based in the U.S., but he was the U.S. president. And funny, I worked there during the Atlanta Olympics.
Okay.
At the corporate office, and he was my boss. But he started a rum company in Richland Rum, and it's pretty decent.
Okay.
Okay, so now let's go to the coast. My favorite place on the coast, if you just are like, I just want to have this coastal Georgia experience without too much effort, then I would say spend the rest of your time at Little St. Simon's Island.
Okay.
It is an all-inclusive, and you have to take a boat to get there. Now, if you want to check it out, but you don't want to stay the night, you can do a day pass, but you're going to miss out on all the best things. They have naturalists there who do projects with you. So we were shark fishing with our kids, and you can ride bikes through there. They grow all their own food, so they make amazing meals for you. They try to use all the food in their garden. And you've got kayaks and canoes and bikes and all of that available to you. And your cell phone's not going to work, which makes it amazing. Most people do think, though, like I said before, that they want to go to Savannah. And I understand that Savannah's got a cool history. It's a party vibe. And if that's what you're after, then by all means go. It's basically the South's Las Vegas, if you ask me.
Okay.
There are museums.
I have
there.
never heard it described that way.
Really,
but I haven't been to
absolutely
Savannah
the way
yet.
I see it. So there's the Telfair Museum. This is a system of 3 museums. It's definitely worth looking at if you're in the area. They've got some nice food places, but all in all, I think it's the tourist trap of tourist traps. My recommendation would be to skip it and go to St. Simon's Island.
Okay.
Not to be confused with Little St. Simon's Island, which is the all-inclusive getaway. St. Simon's Island, you can drive on a bridge to get there. There's several hotels that you can stay at there. I've always enjoyed getting a Vrbo when we were there because you can
Okay.
get them on the beach for about the same price. The hotels are really expensive. They're all fancy schmancy with big golf courses.
And just in case people are not familiar with VRBO, Vacation Rentals by Owner, that's a site owned by TripAdvisor, my former employer.
Oh, yeah. While you're there, you definitely want to eat at Southern Soul Barbecue.
Okay.
It will knock your socks off, and get the greens. They have collard greens. Now, I grew up with Southern parents, right? So I've always had collard greens and loved them so much. But I love these even more because they put some of that rib rub
Okay.
into the greens and gives it a special flavor. They usually have fried okra, and then they have cornbread, but the barbecue is to die for. And they have all sorts of different spices. And you go and order it, and then you eat outside, but it's covered. So the shade
Yeah.
and the fans are going, but it's really fun. And it's just one of those things you got to do. Get the big sweet tea, the biggest one possible. You can refill it before you leave.
Now,
But
are we down in the region where my sauces for my barbecue are going to tend to be a mustard sauce, or what should I expect down here on the Georgia
again,
coast? A
Atlanta's
style?
just grown so much as a foodie city.
Yep.
This place, for example, they have 8 different sauces. I
Okay.
don't think there's a signature anymore in
Okay.
Atlanta. What else? Oh, so go to the beach there. Beautiful beaches, white sand, not as many people, which is lovely. There's waves that the kids can play in, but they're not huge. They're not like your California waves, Chris. They're gentle, but still really fun. There's great history in that area. The state parks are going to include some of the Civil War stops, sieges. But yeah, that's what I would do there.
And when you say history, so I'm seeing Fort Frederica National Monument, for instance, there, which
And
is
yes, and Fort McAllister is
okay.
there. And then Skidaway Island is a really fun state park that's in that area too.
Skidaway Island. All right. Any idea why the island is named Skidaway Island?
Nope, I have no idea.
Okay.
But there's also, I'll tell you something funny. Just right outside of that, it's not really a beach. It's like a section of muddy dirt that allows you to get into the water, but it's called Butterbean Beach. I don't know if you're familiar with butter beans.
No.
They're like lima beans, only a little bit sweeter. They're delicious, very southern, and I have no idea why it's called Butterbean Beach either, but I enjoy those.
Okay. It is likely thought that Skidaway Island is an anglicized version of a local Indian chief's wife's name.
Nice, thank you. And the last thing I'll say is go down all the way south and hit the Okefenokee. Beautiful
Okay.
swamp.
Hmm.
So take a guided ranger tour, boat tour through the trees, see the alligator.
Now, guided tour, is this, am I kayaking, or are we on a flat
You're
bottom
gonna
boat, or?
no, there's so many beautiful trees growing in
Yep.
the water whose knees are familiar with that term? Their knees
Yep.
are showing. That there's no way you can get much more than a kayak or maybe a canoe through there. I would recommend the kayak. And again, it's easy to get lost and you want to see the cool places, do the ranger led tour. You're more than welcome to go out on your own, but it's worth doing the ranger tour there.
Okay. And this is the Okefenokee, which you got to love the name, Okefenokee, first of all. We just have to pause there and appreciate that for a second. Obviously, Native American word. National Wildlife Refuge is what you're talking about.
Yes. And then there's also the state park, Stevens State Park, which is one part of the Okefenokee. They work together hand in hand.
Excellent. Anything else you want to put into our itinerary before we talk about some more overview questions and wrap up questions?
Yeah, I want to go back to Atlanta if we can, because you're going to have to
Yep.
fly out of there anyway, right?
Yep.
I want to recommend additional places to eat, and then we didn't talk about where to stay when you're there.
Okay.
I love this newish boutique hotel that's up there called the Hotel Claremont. A really amazing piece of Atlanta history is a strip club called the Claremont Lounge. Anthony Bourdain's been there, so you might have seen that on his thing. It's been around since 1965, and it is known for its unusual strippers. So they are...
Now, you tend to write for family travel. Is this something I'm going to be finding an article on your website?
Probably not Claremont Lounge, but the Hotel Claremont.
Okay.
It's just one of those things you have to see. It's like the circus of strip clubs.
Okay.
And so that's been around, like I said, since 1965.
And we're not quite G-rated. We're a little more into the PG, but I still have no idea what you're talking about. I appreciate your obfuscation here, but...
They are overweight.
Okay. A different body size and
Yes.
type than one might expect. All right.
Transgender.
Okay.
Just...
Greater variety, you're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
And the thing is, and they sell themselves as being of a different variety.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
So right above that, not too long ago, they built a Hotel Claremont. And you're not going to find anything related to the strip club there, right? So if you wanted to bring your kids there, you totally could. But it pays homage to the strip club with its name and its location being right above it. But really cute rooms that don't look like a normal hotel. And it's known for its rooftop bar. So great views of the city. You can have cocktails up there. And then they've got a restaurant in there called Tiny Lou's. Tiny Lou was one of the strippers.
Build a routine with Ollie that supports your wellness needs, like getting your daily vitamins and minerals with Ollie's multi-gummies, or keeping your mood upbeat with all the vitamin D in Hello Happy. Give your gut health some support with probiotics, and wake up feeling refreshed after taking Ollie Sleep. Do wellness on your terms. Find Ollie at a Walmart or Target near you or at ollie.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Now, if that is not your fun, then the other place I recommend staying is Stonehurst Place. It's in Midtown, which is right near the parks, the art museums, lots of restaurants. And my husband and I have stayed there several times. It's a beautiful boutique bed and breakfast / hotel.
Okay.
And they make a great breakfast. It's in the middle of everything. You're blown away that you are staying in Atlanta. So that's
what actually looking at the picture of it looked like it'd be something that would be more out in the country.
Yes, but it's right in the middle of the city.
Interesting.
Which is fantastic. And then again, I got you out of the city too fast earlier to enjoy some food. I want to recommend that you go to Mary Mac's Tea Room. There were a lot of tea rooms in the South because this was a way for women whose husbands were away at war to make money for the family. And the only one in Georgia that's still serving food is Mary Mac's. And it is good food too. You're going to go in and they're going to bring you a little cup to the table with stuff called pot liquor. Liker, I think is how you spell it, but although it's intended to be like liquor.
Yeah.
And it is the juice from greens, like from collard greens.
Okay.
Or it could be collard greens, mustard greens, a mix of those. And it's so delicious. So you drink that. And then you can order your meat and sides. So meat and sides place. I love fried liver. Yeah, I said it. So that's good there.
You'd already lost me at the okra and the greens here, and I'm completely gone with the fried liver. But
they have fried chicken, meatloaf, that sort of thing too. And then when you leave, grab a box of the cinnamon rolls to have in the morning. They're very yeasty and delicious. And then the other place to go for breakfast is a place called Homegrown. Amazing chicken sandwiches.
And before we get too far away from it, when you talk about meat and sides, so this is, you have your main meat portion and then you typically have two sides?
It's meat and 2 or meat and 3.
Oh,
So
that's
yes,
right.
2
Okay. Yep.
sides or 3 sides, depending on how much you want to pay.
Yep. So that might be the mac and cheese or the okra or whatever you
Yes,
choose.
or
Yeah.
coleslaw.
Probably
or-
fried.
Exactly.
Okay.
So go to Homegrown for breakfast. You might have to stand in line. It's going to be worth it. You're going to get the chicken biscuit. It's going to be open face, and you're going to put sawmill gravy on top of it.
Sawmill gravy.
That's the white gravy. Made
Okay.
with, it's white, it's made with flour, and it's got pepper in it.
Okay.
It's delicious.
What is the non-white gravy called?
Gravy?
I'm just a phrase I don't know. Okay.
And then I have to tell you my 2 favorite restaurants in all of Atlanta. One is Gun Show. It's Kevin Gillespie. He's a celebrity chef, but I tend to shy away from them, but his food is so amazing. Gun Show is a dim sum restaurant. So you
Okay.
come in, you sit down, people bring these carts around and you pick up what you want and they mark it down. And if you don't want it, you say, I'll pass this time. Or if you want to get something else again, because it was so good. But what's interesting about it is that he has guest chefs. And they are usually 2 or 3 of them are cooking in the open. And all of their food's coming out. And it's not just like my friend Mary's mom. It's like James Beard Award-winning chefs are at his restaurant preparing these small dishes.
Well, and when you say dim sum, you mean dim sum style, because I'm not seeing anything that's traditional dim sum.
For sure, just the style.
I'm not
That's how
seeing
they
the
tout themselves,
buns and the
yes.
steam buns and the
And they
tripe.
might have that type of food. Just depends on who's there that night.
Interesting. So
you can go
a
every
new
day
take on
and it'll
that
be
style.
different food.
Okay.
The other one is Miller Union. And Steven Satterfield is the chef there. He's known, I think it was the New York Times, but I could be wrong. He was named the vegetable shaman. He has this really great book about what to do with different vegetables throughout the year. It's not a vegetarian restaurant, although there are vegetarian dishes, but what he does with vegetables is magical. And if you were to go for lunch, you could get a sample of his food, but he has this pastry chef who makes homemade ice cream sandwiches for lunch. So they're all different flavors. Every week she changes the flavors, but she makes the crust, like the cookie part of it. She makes the ice cream. She puts it together. There's not very many of them, so you want to go to lunch early if you want that. Super, super delicious.
And if I were to ask your boys what restaurant they miss in Atlanta that's not a chain restaurant, would they have an answer?
What do they miss? Probably my boys like sushi.
Okay.
And there's this place we didn't go to a lot because they eat a lot, but it's called Oku Sushi. It's downtown and fantastic, amazing sushi. And I like to think I know sushi since I lived in Japan for 4 years.
Yep.
And then also a really cool rooftop, if that's your thing.
Interesting. All right. Good to know.
Yeah, no. They don't eat much more than tuna, but they'll eat their weight in tuna.
Anything else we want to add to this itinerary before we get to some of our wrap-up questions?
No, I think we covered the big things. The other thing I'll say that most people don't think about when they think about Georgia, Georgia's known for the Yollywood factor, right, nowadays, as opposed to Hollywood, Yollywood.
Okay.
Huge filming city now. The Walking Dead, Tyler Perry Studios, Stranger Things, all of those, the Marvel movies. But before it was a film state, it's been a music state. So some of the big names that of all different types of music genres, Ray Charles, Ludacris, Outkast, the Allman Brothers, James Brown, Otis Redding, R.E.M., Usher, Gladys Knight, the Zac Brown Band, Travis Tritt, all of those are Georgia musicians. And so if music is your jam, Macon, Georgia is a really great place to go and explore the history of the music in Georgia. There's some great museums there and great little bars to check out live music. And they offer tours like the Allman Brother tours. So
Okay.
I think that's it. I think that's about all I have to say. I still call it my state, even though I live in Colorado.
It's okay. And we have other episodes if people want more details. We do have episodes on Atlanta, on Savannah separately, and then also one on the Sea Islands of Georgia and South Carolina. So I'll put some links to those in the show notes, or you can just click on the Georgia word at the top of this post and the website and see more of what we have on the great state of Georgia. As we start to wrap this up, Leslie, you're standing in the prettiest spot in all of Georgia. Where are you standing and what are you looking at?
The prettiest spot in all of Georgia. I think I've taken a hike. It's called Blood Mountain, and it's about 5 miles. The whole entire hike is beautiful, but when you get to the end, you can climb up this huge rock and you can see for miles and miles, and it's just forest and beautiful trees. Clouds are always great in Georgia, and it's just one of those places that brings me back to myself, and I forget all the worries I have at home or the laundry piling up, that sort of thing. It's really beautiful. And also fun.
Mm-hmm.
Right across the street from where you park for that hike is the Wallasey Mountain Inn. And the Appalachian Trail goes through that old building and is the only covered part of the Appalachian Trail.
That is funny. And Blood Mountain is the high point of the Appalachian Trail in Georgia.
Oh, wow.
Interestingly enough, and hence the view. One thing that makes you laugh and say only in Georgia.
Pot liquor in a restaurant as you sit down. Used to get bread a lot, chips and salsa if you're in a Mexican restaurant.
Sure.
You're going to get pot liquor in Georgia.
Yeah, that's different. And then if you had to summarize Georgia in just 3 words, what 3 words would you choose?
Food, hiking, beach.
Our guest again has been Lesli Peterson. Now, Leslie, if we wanted to send people to your best post at 365atlantatraveler.com on Georgia, where are we going to send them to?
I've got 60 of the best things to do in Georgia. So that's the best post to go to get all the info on a lot of these things that I've talked about.
Excellent, excellent. And Lesli, as I mentioned, also has a podcast. It is not so much about travel as the pains of being a travel blogger and how to do it better despite Google these days. Do you want to tell us a little more about that?
Sure. You can go to lesliepeterson.com and there's a link to the podcast there. I've been doing it for a little bit, almost a year now, and just started out trying to share all the SEO knowledge I had, but then Googlegate happened and changed forever. And so I'm just working through how to monetize what I'm doing and just being open and sharing that journey with everyone.
And so some of you don't know what she's talking about, and lucky for you.
Yes, that's true.
But many travel bloggers lost, because of changes in the Google algorithm, up to 90% of their traffic over the last year. And some people who were making a living from blogging are having a much harder time doing that today. I'm fortunately one of those people whose traffic actually grew last year, but certainly know many people who that was not their experience. And I believe, Lesli, you were one of those who lost not 90%, but a lot.
60%, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the reason why it's sometimes better to listen to somebody else's travel podcast or read somebody else's travel blog rather than do it yourself.
Yes.
Lesli, thank you so much for coming on Amateur Traveler and sharing with us your obvious love for the great state of Georgia.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. And maybe in a couple of years, I can help you out with Colorado.
Excellent. Special thanks to the patrons of the show and the advertisers who help support Amateur Traveler financially. If you'd like to learn more about what you can get by being a patron of the show, go to patreon.com/amateurtraveler. Speaking of patrons, I heard from Jeff Ulfs, patron and former guest in the show, about the Ali Bates Flint Quarry National Monument. He said, "Thanks for another great episode. This is the episode on Lubbock and Amarillo. Boy, you sure slaughtered the name of Ali Bates Flint Quarry National Monument. This park is adjacent and co-managed with Lake Meredith National Recreation Area by the National Park Service. I worked there in 1998. While there, I attended my first hockey game, the Amarillo Rangers." And Jeff, of course you did. And then I had 2 new reviews of the show. Both happen to be 5 stars. Love, love, love. Just discovered and am becoming an avid listener. Keep them coming, from QBECTY via Apple Podcasts. And he has a show in everywhere. I started listening to this podcast many years ago now. It's not some rambling, super high energy show, but it's always informative. He sticks to pertinent information, and there's a show on literally everywhere. I've gone on a road trip from the Midwest to the West Coast, and he has shows for all the big places I want to visit for recommendations and insight. It's definitely not just the state. I've used Chris's podcast to plan trips to Portugal and the Middle East as well. It's quite a feat. Bravo, Chris. Thanks so much. And that's from Dan, the listener, via Apple Podcasts. New on the Amateur Traveler website since last week is an article about Door County, Wisconsin. It ended up being a 4,000-word article, so quite a lot to say about Door County. It was a great trip, and you'll hear more about that in the podcast a little later. And then also an article about the Rosicrucian Egyptian Museum in San Jose, which is a museum of Egyptology and an interesting place to visit. We also have a new article on visiting Humboldt Redwood State Park, also in California. And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of Amateur Traveler. If you have any questions, send an email to host@amateurtraveler.com, or better yet, leave a comment on this episode at amateurtraveler.com. And thanks so much for listening.